What up, fiction fam? Welcome to Down to Read. My name is Steven, and this video is my review of Mark Danielewski's horror novel, The House of Leaves. Got my cardi on today, as when I read horror, I really like to try and be nice and cozy. This book is a bit of a cult classic, both on Reddit and BookTube, where people have really done some deep dives trying to investigate what it all means. This book is also famous for people DNFing or do not finishing it, mostly due to either the harrowing story, or also that it sometimes can feel a bit too much like a research project. This video won't be a deep dive into explaining what it all means. This video will be a review that captures my feelings reading it and experiencing it. I really feel like, more so than a lot of books, this was an experience reading this, due to the convoluted at times formatting that Mark Danielewski's used, as well as the multi-layers of storytelling. I will go over a spoiler-free summary of the story, then talk about the things that I like, the things that weren't for me, and finally, we'll give it a rating out of 5 stars. If this book's a 5-star banger, we'll do a 5-star bonus wrap up. Okay, so first I think I need to try and explain the unsettling babushka doll that is this book. We're first introduced to a character called Johnny Truant, who is a sleep-deprived, heavy user of drugs and alcohol, who's found this collection of texts from a man who's passed away called Zampano. This text that Zampano's put together compiles notes about a documentary film called The Navidson Record. Johnny Truant is trying to put together and collate and make sense of this collection of texts that Zampano's prepared into a sort of book. And in doing so, he's added his own footnotes, which capture his interpretation of some of Zampano's texts, and also some anecdotes on his life. These footnotes are in addition to the footnotes that Zampano had already prepared about the Navidson Record. To add another layer to this babushka, there's also some uncredited editors who have added some further footnotes to describe the text that Johnny Truant has prepared about the text that Zampano has compiled about the story of the Navidson Record. Follow all that? So let's go through the babushka in a little bit more detail, just to make sure we're all on the same page. At the center of the babushka, we have the Navidson Record. Then one layer up, we have Zampano's notes as he was compiling text about the Navidson Record. Another layer up from that, we have Johnny Truant's notes on Zampano's notes and also what he wrote about the Navidson Record. And then the final layer, we have these editors who have found this book that Johnny's prepared based on Zampano's text about the documentary film called The Navidson Record. That sounds pretty confusing, but you do get the hang of it all after a while. I have heard some people suggest you could ignore the footnotes and just read the portions about the Navidson Record. However, I think if you did that, you'd really be losing a lot of the impact of this book. However, I'm not here to tell you I read every single footnote, because some of them are quite spurious, let's say. Okay, so now let's talk about the Navidson Record. This is a documentary film about Will Navidson and his family, his wife Karen and their children. They move into a house that doesn't quite follow the laws of physics. The initial parts of this documentary are about them discovering and investigating the strange physics of this house. This investigation is captured by cameras that Will has conveniently set up all around the house to capture their family moments, or at least that was the original intent. Without giving too much away, these things include the house being bigger on the inside than the outside, and doors appearing leading to hallways which couldn't physically exist. The rest of the Navidson Record is about Will, who is a photojournalist by trade, pushing things to the limit to investigate this house, often at the detriment of the rest of his family. Reading some parts of Will's investigation of the house really gave me some claustrophobic feelings while I was reading it. Now moving to Johnny Truant. Johnny Truant becomes obsessed with this compilation of texts he finds that Zampano prepared on the Navidson Record, trying to find out what's real, what's not, and give his own interpretations, fill in missing information. And that's what a lot of his footnotes are related to, is his interpretation, or perhaps where he disagrees with some Zampano's commentary. However, also captioned in the footnotes are anecdotes about Johnny's life. And the stories that Johnny tells about his present-day life mostly revolve around drug and alcohol abuse, some sexual encounters, just generally him becoming more and more paranoid as he reads more of these texts about the Navidson Record. Although this may sound less unsettling and less horror, perhaps, than the Navidson Record components of the book, a most unsettling passage in this book happens in one of Johnny Truant's footnotes, something I still think about to this day and has me looking over my shoulder a little bit. So don't say I didn't warn you about that one. To me, both the stories of the Navidson family and Johnny Truant have themes of ambition at the cost of connection with loved ones. Before I get into the things I liked and didn't like about this book, I really have to talk about the formatting and the clever writing techniques that Mark Danielewski uses to bring you in and make it even more unsettling and claustrophobic a read. There are appendices at the back of the book that have you flipping back and forth and feeling a little bit mad as you do this to try and figure out what's going on. A little bit like Johnny was trying to figure out what was going on. There's also a clever use of font types in here and font colors to emphasize certain themes and also to delineate between the passages written by Johnny or Zampano or others. The orientation of the text also flips and there's less text on some pages. Here's an example. And as you're flipping this way or that way to read the book, you can look pretty mad to the rest of the people in the bus. There are also some sections that have missing words that make you really try to fill in the gaps and your mind runs wild trying to figure out why were these sections deleted? What was the content? What was Johnny or Zampano trying to hide? Or, why? Why is a question you ask a lot while reading this book. Also, though, to be honest, there's some changes of format that seem to be Mark Danielewski just taking the piss. I mean, there's some sections that have lists of architects in the columns. Sometimes the text is in just a wee square on one of the pages. And it really just feels like he's just being different to be different and frustrate the reader. And I mean, what type of person would change the format just to frustrate their audience? A lot of parts of this book are open to interpretation, which personally I love. It allows you to have conversations with mates about what did you think about this? And I can definitely see why there's forums, subreddits directed to trying to pull this thing apart and why people read it again and again to see if they have something they missed. The changes in formatting is also a massive selling point of the book. There are some sections where the characters are moving up or down some mysterious stairwell, and the text kind of follows the direction that the characters are traveling in, makes it even more unsettling than the subject matter already is. The appendices also feel really well thought out and not just tacked on to just be there as a gimmick. In fact, there's one particular section of the appendices which is brilliant and involves a code you have to decipher to understand what's happening to somebody from Johnny Truant's background. Really dark but interesting stuff. And there's some pages that have only a few words on them that are really impactful, so as you turn the page, they jump out at you. For the Navidson record component of the book, I just thought it was a little bit too convenient how there's these cameras around that happen to capture anything. Like, I get it, he's a photojournalist, but when things got really crazy, the fact that there was still some cameras rolling, capturing some of this, just seemed, a wee bit too convenient for me. The characters, I didn't really like or connect with any of them, so there wasn't that much tension because I didn't care that much what happened to these characters. Of course, except for the Davidson children. I'm not a monster. I wanted those kids to be okay. Johnny Truant's anecdotes set in the present day are pretty repetitive and not that interesting. Like, we get it, Johnny. You had sex. You have to tell us every time you do it. Come on. I give The House of Leaves 4 stars. The good bits are really good and unsettling and engaging, and I enjoyed flipping back to the appendices, back to the main text, flipping the orientation, and just adapting to the format of the text. I like the experience that the book brought. However, for me, there was too much of the book that didn't add a lot to the story and seemed just to be there for the sake of being there or being a little bit different. Perhaps some have done the deep dive have different opinions to that, but again, this is just my opinion. That's what I do on my channel. If you've read it, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Did you find it unsettling? Or perhaps like some of the first text in this book? Thanks for watching. Zhoosh!